Namaskar, good evening. This is Briefing Room and I'm Swati Joshi. The world is asking one question tonight. What does a ceasefire in the Iran-US-Israel conflict actually look like? Does a ceasefire mean missiles lighting up the sky? Does a ceasefire mean fresh strikes on cities and strategic targets? Does a ceasefire mean key energy infrastructure coming under attack? Now, for days, the world was told that a fragile truce had pulled the region back from the brink. But if this is peace, why does it look so much like war? Tonight, we take a closer look at the developments that are raising serious questions about the stability of the ceasefire. The strikes, the counter-strikes, the celebrations on the streets, the warnings of more action to come, and the remarks from Donald Trump that have added a new dimension to an already volatile situation. As the region stands on edge once again, the question is no longer whether the truce is under pressure, but whether it can hold at all. Let's show you first what started it all. The skies over Beirut lit up once again as Israeli warplanes pounded Hezbollah-linked targets in the Lebanese capital, sending shockwaves across an already volatile Middle East. While the latest strike marks a dramatic escalation, Israel's campaign against Hezbollah never truly stopped. Even amid ceasefire talks and diplomatic efforts, Israeli forces continued launching strikes on Hezbollah positions across Lebanon. Sirens wailed across northern Israel as Iran launched a missile barrage in retaliation for Israeli strikes, marking a dramatic new chapter in the region's escalating conflict. Iranian forces claim to have targeted Israeli air bases, including the largest air base in Israel called the Nevatim Air Base. Explosions rocked the Iranian city of Isfahan as Israel launched retaliatory strikes deep inside Iranian territory, marking a dramatic escalation in the rapidly intensifying conflict between the two rivals. The attack came hours after Iran fired missiles toward Israel. So the attacks, the strikes and the counter-strikes continue. While Donald Trump, of course, urges both sides to practice restraint, both clearly are not paying heed to any of that. A cautious pause in the fighting, but no sign that tensions are easing. Iran has announced a halt to its offensive military operations following the latest round of exchanges with Israel, marking a temporary step back from the brink of a wider regional confrontation. However, Tehran has coupled the announcement with a stern warning, declaring that any future attack by Israel or its allies will be met with a far harsher response. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued a stark warning to Iran, vowing that Israel will respond with force to any future attack. In some of his strongest remarks since the latest round of tensions, Netanyahu declared that Israel would defend itself with determination and made it clear that any aggression from Tehran would not go unanswered. If Iran makes the mistake of attacking Israel, we will respond forcefully, said Benjamin Netanyahu. And remember, this comes at a time when Donald Trump has said he's the one who calls the shots. He says he's asked Israel to practice restraint and not retaliate. Now, as questions mount over the future of the fragile Iran-Israel-US ceasefire, US President Donald Trump is projecting optimism. In his latest remarks, Trump said both sides are now looking toward an immediate ceasefire and claimed that final negotiations aimed at securing a broader peace agreement are actively underway. At the same time, however, Trump made it clear that pressure on the ground will remain, stating that the blockade will stay in place until a final decision is reached. Another question arises, viewers. Was Donald Trump's ceasefire strategy consistent, or did it shift with events on the ground? In April, Donald Trump rejected an initial ceasefire proposal, only to announce a 2-week ceasefire days later. By April 21, he had extended the truce, even as the military blockade remained firmly in place. Fast forward to June, and violence was continuing despite the ceasefire, prompting Trump to remark that a ceasefire could mean moderate shooting. Then came 7th of June. When Trump insisted Benjamin Netanyahu would follow Washington's lead, declaring, "I call all the shots." Less than 24 hours later, fresh strikes rocked the region. Trump publicly urged both sides to stop shooting before later claiming that peace talks were proceeding. Could there be trouble in what many once described as the Trump-Netanyahu partnership? So on one hand, Donald Trump has publicly called on both sides to stop shooting, and repeatedly spoken about ceasefires and peace talks. On the other, Israeli military operations have continued in Iran and Lebanon as well, even after Trump's appeals for restraint. Trump has also insisted that Israel would have no choice but to follow the US approach, declaring that he's the one who calls all the shots. Yet, events on the ground have appeared to tell a more complicated story. Adding to the speculation are reports of tense conversations between Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, with reports suggesting the US president expressed frustration over Israeli strikes at a sensitive moment in the diplomatic process. While neither side has publicly acknowledged any major disagreement, the contrast between Trump's push for de-escalation and Netanyahu's emphasis on military pressure and deterrence is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As the Iran-Israel conflict enters a new and uncertain phase, the question now is not what happened, but what happens from here on. So the first scenario is a controlled tit-for-tat, with both sides continuing calibrated attacks while avoiding an all-out war. The second is far more dangerous, a direct and sustained Iran-Israel conflict involving larger military operations and deeper strikes on strategic targets. A third possibility is the direct entry of United States into the conflict, a move that could dramatically alter the balance and widen the battlefield. Remember, this war is between Iran, Israel and US, but now US, of course, is urging both sides to practice restraint. And then there is the worst-case scenario of full-blown regional war, drawing in multiple actors, including Iran, Israel, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen, potentially setting off a conflict that stretches far beyond the immediate front lines. Let's now take a look at what did this war cost, the cost of war. Remember, as far as Iran's strategy so far is concerned, it has been said that Iran follows the Mosaic Doctrine. Now, what that doctrine says that keep the war going and keep increasing the cost of war on your opponent. That has been Iran's strategy from day one, and it has surprised many by adopting that. Let's break down the details for you. So here is how it looks like. 100 days of war, and now let's take a look at the cost of war on the United States of America. And we are going to break it down into numbers. So $29 billion is Pentagon's official estimate as of May 12th. As of May 12th, this is the official estimate of the cost of war on United States of America. Let's break down the details further. $11.13 billion. $11.13 billion is the cost of the war in just the first 6 days of the war starting. $630 billion to $1 trillion. That's the projected total US war cost. Now, this will help you understand the kind of pressure that US President Donald Trump is dealing with. The reason why you have these urges, these appeals coming in from Donald Trump constantly asking both sides to practice restraint, because this is the total, the projected cost of war on United States of America. $100 billion estimated cost to US households in terms of higher fuel, travel and energy prices. So this is the cost of war, 100 days of war for United States of America. Now, while the fighting may be unfolding thousands of kilometers away, of course, everybody who's directly a stakeholder in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, depends on the Strait of Hormuz for their energy needs and requirements, is being impacted. A prolonged war in West Asia could have very real consequences for India. We're already witnessing that in terms of the price rise, LPG, petrol, diesel. The most immediate concern is oil. India imports more than 85% of its crude oil requirements, making it highly insensitive to any disruption in global energy markets. A prolonged conflict could drive up crude prices, pushing fuel costs higher and adding to inflationary pressures. That in turn could translate into more expensive transportation, higher food prices and increased costs for businesses and manufacturers. Many of these impacts are something that we are witnessing already all around us. There are also concerns about energy security. Any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a critical artery for global oil shipments could affect supplies reaching India. Once again, we already witnessed that in the past couple of days. A rising oil import bill could put additional pressure on the rupee and widen the country's trade deficit. Beyond economics, there is the human dimension as well. Nearly 9 million Indians live and work across the Gulf region, with remittances from the region serving as a crucial source of income for countless families back home. At a time when global energy markets remain volatile and households across the world continue to grapple with rising fuel costs, India is presenting itself as something of an exception when it comes to LPG prices. Government data shows that the cost of a 14.2 kilogram domestic LPG cylinder under the Ujjwala scheme stands at 642 rupees, while the unsubsidized price is 942, both significantly lower than prices in several neighboring countries and major economies. A comparison of international LPG prices shows consumers in Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka paying more for a similar cylinder, while prices in countries such as US, Australia and Canada are substantially higher. Now, to talk about the situation in West Asia, the impact of that in the longer run, earlier I had a conversation with former White House advisor on war, Mr. Robert Pape. Take a look at it. And tonight we are joined by Mr. Robert Pape, former White House advisor on war. Thank you very much for giving us your time, Mr. Pape. My first question to you is, what kind of a ceasefire is this, where everyone talks about a peace deal and the next thing that you hear right after that commitment are fresh attacks? Where are things heading to in West Asia?
This is a false ceasefire. This has not really been a solid ceasefire for many weeks. We've had, before the last 12 hours, other punctuated events that have occurred. And what you are seeing is we are in the middle stages of this war. Many people have been hoping that we're in the last stages of the war, that we had a beginning, everybody's understood, somehow this should not go on, it's bad, and so the war would just somehow coast to an end and would go through a ceasefire, it'd be maybe a little rocky, and then finally we'd end up having the end of the war. That's just not what's happening. The war, we're over the beginning. The beginning is over. The middle stages of the war are where the real security competition is going to happen. And that's what people are missing.
And what is the last stage going to look like? Who is on the losing side?
We're in the middle stage now, and this middle stage looks like Iran moving from survival to ambition. So what you are seeing is in particular a change in Iran, its behavior and its rhetoric. So Iran began, when the war began, it was a surprise attack. Simply surviving was a big goal. Then Iran surprised the world by gaining control of the Strait of Hormuz. And people might think, oh, Iran would be satisfied, just end the war in some way with that status quo because it survived and maybe a little better off. That's not what Iran is. What Iran's been doing in the last few weeks is it's been increasing. Every time it gets hit, it ups the ante. You saw this in Kuwait and you saw this in Bahrain. In Kuwait in particular, Iran hit not just U.S. military bases, but the airport. So what it's doing is it's spreading its wings. It's saying to the Gulf states through military force that the pressure, the cost of U.S. bases is going up. Withdraw, drive a wedge. Then you saw that almost at that same point, that time, it started to threaten Israel. It said, Israel, stop hitting the Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut. And then President Trump got on the phone with Israel, stop hitting the strongholds in Beirut.
Yes. For
a few days he did. And then what you see is Israel kept hitting those strongholds in Beirut. Iran has followed through. So Iran has just demonstrated to the Hezbollah, its key ally, it will protect it. And what's happened as a result? The Houthis have jumped in, and they are now threatening Israeli shipping around the Red Sea choke point. So what you are seeing is not a status quo, a fragility where people are just trying to get to ending a war.
Right.
You're seeing the middle of a war where the competition is stiff.
Now, Donald Trump says that he's the one calling the shots, but is that really the case on ground? Because he urges Netanyahu to practice restraint and not retaliate. That's exactly what Netanyahu does. Are they aligned?
No, they're not. And you saw immediately that President Trump called Netanyahu. Again, this is the second phone call. Did this a week ago, and maybe pulled back Netanyahu for a day or two, but now calls again and says to Netanyahu, don't retaliate for Iran's attack on Israel. And what does Netanyahu do? He launches an airstrikes into Iran. This is not President Trump calling the shots. This is President Trump trying to send a message to his domestic audience here in the United States that he's somehow in control, but he's not in control. And in fact, if President Trump was going to actually call the shots, he would have to take away the money to Israel, not a year from now, but right now, this second. Literally stop the flow of funds, the economic funds, the military funds, military equipment to Israel, literally wall it off. He has that power. He's not using it. And that's why Netanyahu is essentially ignoring everything he says.
Now, you are right that, many experts, including war experts, felt initially that Iran won't be able to hold its position. It will not be able to fight back, definitely not sustain for these many days. What makes you say that Iran is the new superpower in your assessment?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not the new superpower yet, and it's not going to be as strong as the United States. It is going to emerge over the next year and a half, 18 months, as the fourth center of world power. It'll be number one, the United States, number two, China, number three, Russia. Iran will be the next state in terms of the hierarchy. And that is the trajectory it is on. It is now not just consolidating a position, it's spreading its wings, literally as we speak this week, to spread its influence into the Gulf states and into Lebanon to protect Hezbollah and even with the Houthis. So notice what's occurring is Iran is bit by bit, not all at once, it is on the trajectory to become the dominant state in the Persian Gulf. That will not happen overnight, but that's what I've been saying since April. I've been saying for months this was coming, and what you're seeing is it's unfolding, and it will go incremental. The only way to stop this is to militarily stop it. So Iran will not simply decide to stop, just as the United States is the hegemon in North America and in the Western Hemisphere. China wants to be the hegemon in Asia. Russia wants to be the hegemon in Eastern Europe. So why, if we don't have a history of states not wanting to be the dominant power in their neighborhood. Iran wants to be the dominant power in its neighborhood, and that is working itself out over time.
Now, in your previous assessments, you've said Iran will become Trump's Vietnam. Why so?
Because for Vietnam, America got into an escalation trap where it tactically succeeded, bombs hit targets, but its strategic position weakened at every step, week by week, month by month. That encouraged then President Johnson, the American president of Vietnam, to up the ante, to escalate. And what you're seeing here is that that Vietnam model has been is a dominant way to understand what's occurring here in the Persian Gulf. Now, in Vietnam, escalation did not go up day by day by day by day. That's not how this worked, man. It was a years-long war. It didn't start out to be a years-long war, but it ended up being a years-long war with months of relative plateauing. here you're seeing a similar thing. You're seeing that we're in the middle stages of the war. In the middle stages, there will be weeks of what appear to be plateaus. That will create optimism by people that don't study war so much here. But what's really happening is those weeks of plateau will then be punctuated by days and maybe even weeks of terror, real terror.
What is the way out for America?
The way out for America would be to develop a true long-range strategy for the Persian Gulf, a strategy you would move to over a period of months and years, not simply try to get a quick win. And the problem for President Trump right now is he has the midterms coming up in November. So long-range thinking is not possible right now for President Trump politically, because he's got to think about the November elections. So for President Trump, he's got two parts of his domestic political base. One part wants to see the war over, the other part wants to see the war escalate. And notice he talks out of both sides of his mouth, sometimes in the same week, sometimes in the same day. And it's because he's trying to appease both parts of his base, domestic base, and this is going to go on. The alternative, man, would be to actually develop a several-year plan, a real strategy, you see, but there's nowhere in sight of a strategy, and the reason is for what I'm saying. It's because of the midterms. He's got the pressure to get through his midterms. Netanyahu also has elections coming up in the fall. 80%, 75% of Israeli society wants to see Israel expand by conquering Muslim territory.
All the stakeholders, including India, who heavily rely on the Strait of Hormuz for energy supply, what does it mean and how much more would one have to wait before one can actually say that things are looking to settle down, that they're going to normalize perhaps?
January. So this is the thing. What they're thinking, again, I deal with this on my Substack, the escalation trap, all the time. I put out the economic patterns as I see them from my studies of economic blockades and economic sanctions, and I get people writing in pushback from the financial community, and this has been happening for months, where they tell me this is all just going to end here soon, it's almost all over. So the thinking on the financial community is they assume a short war. They've been assuming a short war for 3 months, and it's not a short war. And the inventories are running down. And notice, it's not just the inventories are running down now for the world, which will hit bottom somewhere around middle of July, end of July. But notice the Houthis, which is that Yemeni proxy for Iran, are now threatening the Red Sea choke point. Well, there's 3 to 4 million barrels of oil a day being rerouted around Hormuz by Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states that are coming out of the Red Sea. So this isn't just we're running down on the inventories now. The Red Sea is being put in play. Now, it's still in the baby stages, but notice these are not getting better. The risks are not going down. I also hear from these the folks that we're about to open like new pipelines in 2027. This all assumes they're not going to be bombed. They're not going to be a war. Okay, so this is we're like fantasizing the future as if there's no war.
Absolutely.
You see, well, of course, then if there's no war, everybody is going to go back to the world of stability. This is not the future.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Donald Trump was the first one to say that this is going to be a quick little detour, but that has turned into a long-drawn war. Your assessment is that this is a trap. This is Trump's Vietnam, and he definitely does not call the shots. Thank you very much, Mr. Pape, for speaking with us. Thank you for your insights on this subject.
Thank you for having me.